Humanity was the newest member of the Galactic Council, but not by invitation. They had forced their way in, not with war or conquest, but with sheer, stubborn persistence. Unlike the other species who had been discovered and guided into the galactic fold, humans had found their own way to the stars, reverse engineering stolen technology, adapting where others would falter, and proving impossible to ignore. Yet despite their presence, they were dismissed. The greater species of the galaxy saw them as primitive, weak, and biologically unimpressive. No cybernetic enhancements, no genetic superiority, no telepathic abilities. They were, at best, an anomaly. At worst, an infestation. In the Great Chamber of the Galactic Council, the gathered representatives of dozens of powerful species observed the proceedings with curiosity and disdain. The chamber itself was a vast circular structure carved from obsidian-like stone, its high ceilings adorned with luminous strands of biolights. At the center stood the delegation of the Draxian Dominion, a warrior empire that had dominated the battlefields of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Towering figures clad in dark crimson armor, their reptilian features twisted in amusement, they addressed the assembled council. Commander Zelzora, the leader of the Dominion's elite forces, stepped forward, his taloned hands clasped behind his back. His golden eyes gleamed with condescension as he spoke. Humanity is curious, persistent perhaps, but this council has yet to see proof of their capability. Their military, if it can even be called that, is primitive. Their tactics, outdated. Their technology, quaint. And their warriors. He exhaled a hissing chuckle. Fragile. Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. Even the more neutral species nodded, while others openly scoffed. The Draxians, renowned for their combat prowess, rarely bothered to acknowledge lesser species. That they had taken an interest in humanity at all was only because they saw an opportunity, a demonstration, one that would permanently cement mankind's place at the bottom of the hierarchy. We propose a trial, Zelzora continued, spreading his arms theatrically. A live combat scenario. One human warrior against an elite hunting squad from the Dominion's finest. A chance for them to prove themselves if they can. There was no need to say the rest, everyone knew the truth. This was not a test. It was an execution with an audience. The council chambers remained silent for a long moment. Then, a voice cut through the stillness. We accept. The speaker was Ambassador Elias Ward, the human representative. He was an older man, silver-haired, but with sharp, unyielding eyes. He showed no hesitation, no protest, no attempt to argue for better terms. He simply spoke as if the matter had already been settled. A ripple of surprise passed through the chamber. Zelzora tilted his head slightly, intrigued. Interesting, the Draxian mused. And who will you send to their death? From the human delegation, a figure stepped forward. Clad in a dark combat suit, tall, broad-shouldered, yet unnervingly calm, Captain Isaac Hayes met Zelzora's gaze with an expression of quiet calculation. His call sign, Ghost. A veteran of Earth's Black Ops Reconnaissance Division, an expert in long-range engagements, survival, and asymmetric warfare. The Council's holographic display flickered to life, showing his dossier. It was unimpressive. By their standards, no augments, no psionic enhancements, just a man with a rifle. A sniper, Zelzora said, his voice laced with contempt. A coward's weapon. A few alien delegates chuckled. Snipers were dishonorable, preferring to kill from a distance rather than face their enemy in direct combat. The Draxians, who prided themselves on melee supremacy, saw it as an insult. Isaac didn't react. He didn't rise to the bait, didn't scowl or scoff. He simply studied the battlefield schematic that had appeared in the air before him, committing every detail to memory. The laughter faded. There was something unnerving about his stillness. Very well, Zelzora said after a pause. Let us begin. The designated battleground was Borealis 9, a hostile jungle moon located in neutral space. Once a thriving colony, It had been abandoned decades ago due to unpredictable seismic activity and the presence of aggressive native wildlife. Towering trees, thick undergrowth, deep ravines, and unpredictable weather made it a perfect hunting ground. The rules were simple. A team of 5 Draxian alpha hunters, elite warriors bred and trained for pursuit and extermination, would be deployed. Each was a 9-foot-tall apex predator, equipped with advanced bioarmor, heat-seeking plasma rifles, retractable wrist blades, and personal cloaking fields that rendered them invisible to most detection systems. Their mission: hunt and eliminate the human within 1 hour. Isaac's equipment was minimal: a standard sniper rifle, a combat knife, and a basic survival pack. No drones, no orbital surveillance, no backup. The expectation was clear: he would last minutes, at most. As the Draxian warriors were briefed, they showed no concern. This was beneath them. A human sniper. It was laughable. Some of them even debated amongst themselves who would land the killing blow. The council watched with amusement as the countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The signal was given. The Draxians vanished into the jungle, activating their cloaking fields. Within moments, the only sign of them was the faint shimmer of movement in the dense foliage. They spread out, moving with practiced efficiency, their advanced tracking systems sweeping the environment for any trace of human presence. The cameras panned to Isaac. He had already disappeared. There was no hesitation, no wasted movement. The moment the countdown hit 0, he had melted into the jungle as if he had never been there. No words, no theatrics. Just a ghost slipping into the mist. A murmur spread through the council chambers. They had expected panic, perhaps a frantic attempt at escape. Instead, he had done the exact same thing their hunters had. The Draxians scanned the trees, their infrared optics sweeping for heat signatures. Nothing. Their motion sensors flickered, but revealed only the movement of the wind through the leaves. They slowed, adjusting their approach. The amusement was gone. In the chamber, Zelzora's expression darkened slightly. Something was wrong. One of the alien commentators leaned forward, whispering into his microphone. "And it appears the human is—" He hesitated, his pupils dilating slightly. "Gone?" For the first time, a sliver of uncertainty crept into the voices of the audience. Where was he? Then from the depths of the jungle, the first shot rang out. A single, precise, nearly silent crack of a suppressed rifle, and one of the Draxian hunters dropped. The Draxian warriors spread out, moving with the confidence of apex predators. One was outfitted with state-of-the-art biotrackers, motion-detecting optics, and heat-mapping scanners designed to detect life forms even in the densest environments. Their cloaking fields flickered around them, rendering them nearly invisible to the naked eye, and their plasma rifles hummed with lethal energy. From the observation deck aboard the hovering command vessel, alien spectators watched with amusement. A dozen representatives from different species observed through holographic feeds, their expressions ranging from entertained curiosity to outright disdain. "This will be over soon," one of the council members mused, a gelatinous being whose translucent skin pulsed with amusement. "The human has nowhere to hide." Commander Zelzora stood with his arms crossed, his golden eyes locked onto the feed. "It's already over," he said coldly. "He just doesn't know it yet." The Draxians had perfected the art of the hunt over centuries. Their warriors had stalked and exterminated creatures far deadlier than humans. And yet, beneath their arrogance, there was a lingering unease. The jungle was too quiet. Isaac Hayes was already several steps ahead. He had studied the terrain the moment he stepped foot on Borealis 9. The dense foliage, the humid air, the shifting temperature gradients. It was a sniper's paradise. The Draxian saw a battlefield. He saw a trap waiting to be set. He didn't engage immediately. He didn't need to. Instead, he let the aliens hunt while he prepared the battlefield. Moving silently through the undergrowth, he planted a small device near the base of a massive tree. It was nothing more than a repurposed power cell, but when activated it would emit a faint, irregular heat signature. Not enough to register as a human, but just enough to appear as a fast-moving target on a scanner. Next, he stretched a near-invisible tripwire between two jagged roots, linking it to a tiny sonic decoy. The moment a careless hunter tripped it, the device would emit a high-frequency screech, mimicking human movement. A perfect distraction. He placed several more along his escape route, forcing the aliens to chase phantoms while he repositioned. The Draxians continued forward, scanning the trees, tracking what they believed to be their prey. Their formation was flawed. Overconfident in their technology, they spread out too thin, assuming that one man could pose no threat. Isaac waited, watching. One of the hunters, a particularly large brute named Vecthar, detected movement to his left. A faint heat signature darting between trees. He moved to intercept. A split second before he reached the target, a metallic snap echoed through the jungle. The tripwire activated, a sonic blast rang out, distorting his audio receptors. He staggered, momentarily disoriented. Isaac had already lined up his shot. He exhaled slowly, adjusted for the wind. The bullet left the chamber without a sound, slicing through the air with surgical precision. The impact was instantaneous. The bullet punched through the hunter's skull, bypassing the protective plating and finding the soft gap beneath the jaw. The force sent Vecthar crashing backward, his cloaking field flickering wildly before failing altogether. First blood. For the first time, the alien spectators fell silent. On the command ship, Zelzora's jaw tightened. His warriors never died like this. A clean kill. No struggle. How? One of the observers whispered, leaning forward. How did a primitive projectile penetrate their bioarmor? Isaac had been watching. Testing. The Draxian armor was strong, yes, but it had weak points, gaps where flexibility was required. The neck, the underside of the arms, the back of the knees. He had been studying their movements from the moment he arrived, and now he knew where to aim. The remaining 4 warriors immediately shifted their tactics. The cocky, arrogant Hunt was gone. Now they were on guard. They activated their full-spectrum scanning modes, searching for heat anomalies, electromagnetic fluctuations, anything that could indicate human movement. Isaac gave them nothing. He had already repositioned. While they scanned the last known location of the shot, he was somewhere else entirely. The jungle itself became his weapon. Every rustling leaf, every shifting shadow, every misleading heat signature played into his hands. One of the hunters, Kornath, moved cautiously, sweeping the area with his plasma rifle. He caught a faint heat signature ahead, a humanoid, shape hunched low to the ground. Without hesitation, he fired. The plasma bolt lit up the jungle, scorching the earth where the figure had been. Smoke and fire erupted as the foliage burned away, but there was no body. Kornath barely had time to react before something dropped from above. A thick, jagged branch, carefully cut and rigged to fall, slammed into his head, knocking him forward. The impact wasn't fatal, but it was enough. Isaac didn't hesitate. Another silent shot, this time directly into the back of the alien's skull. Kornath hit the ground, twitched once, then went still, 2 down. From the command ship, the council members leaned forward in stunned silence. A single human, armed with nothing but a rifle, was systematically dismantling an elite Draxian hunting squad. Zelzora's fists clenched. He turned to his second-in-command. Tell them to stop playing and kill him. The remaining 3 Draxian warriors shifted into defensive formations. They no longer saw this as a simple hunt. They saw it as war. They abandoned their usual tactics, grouping together, watching each other's backs. They stopped underestimating their prey. But it was too late. Isaac had already anticipated this. He had led them into a section of the jungle, where the terrain was against them. Narrow paths, sharp ravines, limited movement options, and he had set explosives, not conventional ones. Repurposed plasma cells from the abandoned colony buildings nearby, carefully buried, linked to a remote trigger. As soon as the three warriors stepped into position, Isaac pulled the trigger. A thunderous explosion tore through the jungle. The blast didn't kill them outright, but it disoriented them, sending one crashing into a tree and another tumbling down a small ravine. Their cloaking fields flickered wildly. Isaac moved in for the kill. The first Draxian, still dazed, never saw the knife coming. Isaac buried it between its ribs, twisting once before pulling away. The second, recovering too late, tried to raise his rifle, but a second sniper shot punched through its eye socket. Two more down. The final warrior, alone now, stumbled back, his breathing ragged. For the first time in his life, he felt fear. This wasn't a hunt. This was a massacre. And the human? He was the predator. The jungle was alive with flickering shadows and the acrid scent of burning foliage. Plasma scorch marks still glowed against the twisted underbrush, remnants of desperate alien counterfire. The once confident Draxian warriors were now down to their last fighter, a hulking brute named Zortan, the squad leader himself. Isaac Hayes crouched within the thick canopy, his breathing steady, his rifle nestled against his shoulder. He had spent his life in battlefields, but none quite like this. The Draxians thought they were the apex predators. They had no idea what real hunting looked like. Below, Zortan snarled, scanning the darkness. He tapped a panel on his wrist, sending an encrypted signal to his command ship. Activate thermal sweep. A mechanical pulse rippled through the trees as a high-frequency scan illuminated the battlefield in a false glow of red and orange. Hidden figures emerged from the heat signatures, vague outlines of movement where Isaac had been seen last. Zortan's eyes gleamed with triumph. I have you now, human. The last three warriors, though shaken, reformed their ranks. Using coordinated tactics, they pressed forward in a slow, calculated maneuver, pushing toward the thermal blip. On their scanners, every step they took, every breath they exhaled was one of regained confidence. The tide was shifting. At least, that's what they thought. The moment they breached the clearing, the illusion collapsed. Zortan saw the figure, a crouched human form, weapon raised as if ready to make a final stand. His warriors charged in, plasma rifles blazing, determination rekindled. Then, with a simple flick of Isaac's wrist, the battlefield erupted in fire. A controlled detonation ripped through the ground where the heat signature had been. A high-pressure blast wave surged outward, vaporizing two of the remaining Draxians instantly. Their armor was strong, but their bodies were still flesh and bone beneath. The command ship's observation deck descended into chaos. What was that? One of the council members gasped, watching the blast radius expand in horrified silence. Commander Zelzora slammed his fist against the railing. His golden eyes burned with fury. He baited them, a neutral observer whispered. He let them think they had him. The Draxians hadn't cornered a desperate man. They had walked into a carefully orchestrated execution. The explosions. Shockwave knocked Zortan backward, slamming him against a fallen tree. His armor absorbed the brunt of the force, but he was disoriented. His last squadmate was gone, his best hunters reduced to smoldering corpses. And then, the whispers began. A soft, static-laced voice slithered through the alien comm channels. Not a message, not a language, just unsettling, distorted human voices. Low, predatory murmurs layered beneath a frequency that sent chills down even the most hardened warrior's spine. Zortan's pulse quickened. He gritted his teeth and switched frequencies. The whispering followed him. Then, a sharp, singular phrase in clear, unfiltered galactic standard. You're next. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Zortan ripped his helmet off. The Draxian, equivalent of a panic response. He was sweating. The jungle felt smaller, the air thicker, his world closing in. Isaac was already moving again. The sniper rifle was slung across his back now. He didn't need it. This wasn't a battle of weapons anymore. This was psychological warfare. Using a repurposed Draxian signal amplifier, he hijacked their comms, overlaying their distress frequency with false readings, ghost heat signatures, fabricated movement, even a heartbeat that wasn't there. From the command ship, the alien council watched in disbelief as Zortan fired wildly into the trees, attacking phantoms. "What's he doing?" an Avixian delegate asked, their avian features twitching in confusion. "He's breaking him," a Cathari representative answered. Their smooth, crystalline form reflected the dim light of the observation deck as they leaned forward. "This human. He's not prey. He's the apex predator." The council chamber fell silent. Zortan's hands trembled as he gripped his plasma rifle tighter. He was Draxian. He was the hunter. He had never been afraid before. And yet, now he understood what fear truly was. A rustling behind him. Zortan spun around, firing wildly. His plasma rounds lit up nothing but empty jungle. Then, pain. Single precise shot tore through his shoulder, sending his weapon tumbling from his grip. He roared in agony, his massive form crashing to the jungle floor. Isaac stepped out from the shadows, rifle still smoking from the shot. He moved with the calm precision of a man who had already won. He didn't speak immediately. He let Zortan feel the weight of his defeat. The massive warrior struggled to rise, one of his limbs useless, his once mighty stance now reduced to a vulnerable heap. Isaac tilted his head slightly. "This is the part," he said finally, voice even, calm. "Where you beg." Zortan bared his fangs, but his breathing was uneven. He wanted to lash out, to fight, but his body refused. He had never been hunted before. From the command ship, the silence stretched. No one spoke. No one moved. Until Zelzora finally turned, his voice sharp with forced authority. "End the transmission." The order was ignored. The other species aboard the council ship were watching something historic unfold. They had believed until now that humanity was a primitive upstart species, one that would be humbled, put in its place. Instead, they had witnessed the opposite. A being with no cloaking technology, no plasma rifles, no enhanced physiology, had systematically dismantled a warrior species that prided itself on the hunt. Isaac lowered his rifle. He wasn't even aiming anymore. "You're going to tell your people what happened here," he said, stepping closer. Zortan growled, but there was no conviction in it. Isaac knelt down beside him, close enough that the alien could see the absolute certainty in his gaze. "You're going to tell them what happens when you try to hunt humans." A pause. "And then you're going to run." Zortan's forefingered, hands clenched into fists, but his eyes flickered with something new. Submission. Survival instinct. Isaac had already won. He pushed himself back to his feet, stepping past the defeated alien, vanishing back into the jungle without another word. The command ship's transmission feed went black. Silence. Zelzora's hands tightened into fists. One of the council members exhaled sharply. "This changes everything." Another leaned forward. This war council was meant to decide humanity's place among the stars. They turned toward the still active battlefield feed, the ghostly remnants of a single sniper's calculated destruction. Predator's handiwork. A long silence followed. Then, at last, the Cathari representative's crystalline lips parted into what could almost be mistaken for a smile. "I think we've just found our answer." The jungle was unnervingly silent. The air, once filled with the echoes of plasma fire and desperate alien voices, now lay still, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Smoke curled through the twisted undergrowth, mingling with the acrid scent of burning vegetation and seared flesh. Isaac Hayes adjusted his grip on his rifle, his breath slow and steady. His camouflage suit blended perfectly with the environment, making him a phantom within the trees. His work was almost finished. Only one remained. Commander Zortan, the last surviving warrior of the once mighty Draxian hunting squad. He was kneeling, in the clearing below, his massive four-armed frame shaking, one limb hanging limply from where Isaac's bullet had shattered his shoulder. His bioarmor was cracked thick, dark blood dripping onto the jungle floor. And yet he did not fall. Isaac watched, unseen, as the warrior drew a deep breath. Then, with a guttural growl, he activated it. A surge of energy pulsed through the Draxian's body. His muscles tensed, veins bulging as his rage mode engaged. A last resort survival mechanism that flooded his system with performance-enhancing biochemicals. His breathing deepened, his pupils dilated, shifting from their normal reptilian slits into a pure, glowing crimson. His wound stopped bleeding as his body forced itself to keep fighting. His heartbeat doubled, then tripled, sending a brutal rush of oxygen and adrenaline through his system. The Draxians were known for this. They only truly became monsters when cornered. Isaac remained perfectly still, watching from the treetops as Zortan rose to his full height. The warrior exhaled sharply, flexing his claws. His strength had nearly doubled, his speed too. His mind was gone, consumed by primal bloodlust. This was no longer a hunt. This was a last stand. Zortan threw back his head and roared, a sound so powerful that even the distant command ship's external sensors picked it up. From the observation deck, the Galactic Council members leaned forward in stunned anticipation. Their best warriors had fallen, their greatest hunters decimated. But now the last one stood, wounded, enraged, but still very much alive. And he was coming for the human. Isaac didn't move as Zortan charged into the jungle, tearing through trees and underbrush with terrifying speed. His movements were no longer calculated, no tactics, no strategy, just pure, unrelenting force. Isaac had one shot left, one chance. He exhaled, feeling the familiar stillness settle over him. This moment, this one moment was what separated men from beasts. Zortan moved faster than any normal being should, leaping from the ground straight toward him, a blur of armored muscle and clawed fury, closing the distance in seconds. But Isaac had already calculated everything: the angle, the velocity, the force of impact, and most importantly, the perfect kill shot. Time slowed. Isaac pulled the trigger. The sniper rifle's suppressed shot barely made a sound. A single high-caliber round tore through the air, cutting through the chaos with deadly precision. And then, impact. The bullet pierced directly through Zortan's eye socket, shattering bone, exiting through the back of his skull in a spray of dark blood. The force of it snapped his head backward mid-air, cutting his momentum short. For a fraction of a second, the mighty Draxian remained suspended, his monstrous form frozen, arms still reaching out, claws inches from Isaac's position. Then, gravity won. His lifeless body crashed into the jungle floor, skidding several feet before coming to a final, unmoving stop. Silence. A deep, heavy silence that stretched across the battlefield and beyond. From the observation deck, no one spoke. The alien commentators who had mocked humanity from the start stood frozen, their expressions locked in absolute disbelief. Isaac didn't gloat, didn't celebrate, didn't move for a long moment. He simply lowered his rifle. Then, with the calm precision of a man who had done this before, he climbed down from his perch and stepped into the clearing, his boots crunching softly against the scorched earth. His gaze didn't even flick to Zortan's lifeless corpse. He already knew the result. Instead, he turned his head upward, toward the sky, toward the hovering Galactic Council ship watching from above. And then, he smirked. It was small, barely noticeable, but they all saw it. From the command ship's observation deck, the silence lingered. Selzora, the Draxian warlord who had proposed this entire test, had not moved. His taloned hands were clenched against the railing, his golden, eyes wide, staring at the screen as if trying to process the impossible. One of the council members finally exhaled, shaking their head. This. They trailed off, swallowed hard. This isn't right, another muttered. He wasn't supposed to win. A nervous Avixian officer cleared his throat. His voice cracked. He tried again. That was a fluke. He got lucky. A deep, crystalline chuckle cut through the tense silence. It came from the Cathari, representative. They leaned forward, smooth, crystal-like lips curving into what almost resembled a smile. Luck? They mused. Their voice was like the soft ringing of wind chimes, but it carried undeniable weight. Is that what you call it? The Avixian stiffened but said nothing. The Cathari shifted their gaze, looking back at the screen, at the lone human standing victorious amid the jungle ruins of his enemies. What are they? Someone whispered. The question lingered, hanging heavy in the air. For the first time since humanity's entrance into the Galactic Council, no one had an answer. Then a voice finally broke the silence. Soft, steady, unshaken. It came from the human diplomat, the one who had been dismissed earlier in the assembly. She folded her hands in front of her, her expression unreadable, and then, with calm certainty, she spoke. Now you understand, she said, voice quiet but cutting through the room like a blade. Now you understand why you should never hunt apex predators. The words settled over the chamber like a heavy weight. A long silence stretched as the council members absorbed the undeniable reality before them. No one laughed anymore. No one mocked. They had come here expecting weakness. Instead, they had witnessed the rise of something far more dangerous, something far more lethal, something that had just earned its place among the stars. Isaac Hayes, humanity's lone representative in this twisted game, turned away from the sky, adjusting his rifle strap. Over his shoulder, without a word, he vanished back into the jungle. The final transmission feed cut to black, and the War Council, once so certain of their superiority, sat in absolute, stunned silence. The once mighty Draxian Dominion had fallen silent. Their reputation as the galaxy's supreme hunters lay in ruins, shattered by the very species they had sought to humiliate. Humanity had not just survived the test, they had rewritten the rules of war. The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with hushed voices, murmurs of unease and disbelief. The whispers spread like wildfire across the cosmos. The humans were not prey. They were not weak. They were something else entirely. Something far more dangerous. Isaac Hayes strode up the ramp of the human shuttle, his expression unreadable, his rifle slung over his shoulder. The jungle moon of Borealis 9 was behind him, but he knew this was only the beginning. As he stepped inside, the cockpit screens flickered to life. A new transmission bypassed standard security protocols, its encryption far beyond anything used in routine military channels. A single message appeared. Your real mission begins now. Isaac stared at the words, his grip tightening slightly. No, sender. No identification, just a message that changed everything. The screen faded to black. Beyond the stars, unseen forces were already shifting. And somewhere in the vastness of space, humanity's next challenge was waiting.